Central European culture is deeply connected with the Jewish way of thinking. And Israeli writer Yossi Klein Halevi has been awarded the Honorary Central European Award. However, for reasons which are known to us, he can't come here to be in person. However, he said that in the nearest future, he will try to come to Bratislava, so the award itself, the ceremony, will take place next spring or beginning of summer. Henrietta Mickiewiczowa is going to read his letter to Central European Forum. He reflects very historic moments of anti-Semitism, which we see in the world today, like neo-anti-Semitism, and Central Europe, which was a part of the Snyder's bloody territories, like Halevi and we think, has the moral obligation to stop this cognitive disorder resulting in blood mass murdering. Now I will ask my friend Henrietta to take the floor and to read the letter we've got only a few hours ago. I am deeply touched by this award. I regret that the tragic circumstances in my country have made it impossible for me to be with you in person. I look forward to coming to Bratislava in the future. To be named an Honorary Central European brings me back full circle to the moment I first encountered the nations of Central and Eastern Europe. As a young journalist reporting on the fall of communism in 1989, I was in Poland when solidarity took power, I was in Berlin when the wall fell, and in Prague when celebratory crowds danced in the streets. The Central Europe I encountered then, and it was an example to the world in resisting evil. As a former activist in the movement to free the Jews from the Soviet Union, I felt a shared purpose with the nations struggling to free themselves from Soviet domination. It was an extraordinary moment when history and the miraculous converged, which brings me to this terrible moment in the Middle East. As someone committed to reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians, these two nations who have a right to live in this small piece of land, I am rather shattered than surprised. I've always been writing about the claims of history and justice, which don't belong exclusively to one side of this conflict. I wrote about how both sides need to recognize not only the humanity of the other, but the legitimacy of its national story. And yet, to speak today, as is fashionable in much of the West, of how both sides are to blame for bringing us to this moment, misses the essential truth of what we are witnessing in Gaza. The October 7 massacre, the torture and dismembering and burning alive of over 1,000 Israelis was not simply another turn in this cycle of violence. It was a turning point in the conflict where the genocidal intention of Hamas were exposed. There are moments in history when resorting to both sides are to blame means allowing evil to prevail. Certainly, both sides share blame for the conflict. Palestinian leaders rejected every offer for peace that was ever placed on the table. As for Israel, we allowed ourselves to be tempted by the lure of the beloved biblical lands and built settlements across the West Bank, thus only deepening the occupation and distancing the chances for a two-state solution. But the October 7 massacre was not about both sides. This was not about the occupation, unless one conflates, as Hamas does, the occupation would be equal with the existence of a Jewish state in any borders. Hamas's goal is not a two-state solution, but the elimination of Israel. Its language and goal are exterminationists. Its spiritual roots go back to the Palestinian leader of 1940s, Hay Amin al-Husseini, who spent the war years in Berlin as Hitler's guest and organized Muslim SS brigades. The October 7 massacre is the latest expression of this poisoned tradition. If Israel has any meaning as a safe refuge for the Jewish people, it cannot allow the genocidal regime that committed those atrocities to remain in power on its borders.
Ako Izraelčan sa neveriacky dívam na to, ako mladí Európania a Američania
I watch with incredulity as young Europeans and Americans march for Hamas and chant its genocidal slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." October 7th was a glimpse into what that slogan would mean if Israel's 7 million Jews were unable to defend themselves in a Palestinian state, from the river to the sea, with no place for Jewish self-determination. I've noted the near absence of similar demonstrations in the countries once held hostage by the Soviet Union. I think it's no coincidence your societies still remember the Soviet lies and distortions, how anti-Zionism was a code word for anti-Semitism, and how anti-Semitism was manipulated to enforce totalitarian community. Of all people, Central Europeans will understand this moment. The international community is right to be urgently concerned with the suffering and dislocation of the innocent in Gaza, and to remind Israel of its responsibilities under international law. But humanitarian concern cannot blur the moral justification for this war against Hamas, which seeks immunity by operating from schools and mosques and hospitals. The moral context for Israel's war against Hamas is the American war against ISIS. The devastation and civilian suffering in Raqqa and Mosul did not stop America from its terrible and unavoidable war. And Israel will not stop until the Hamas regime meets the same fate as ISIS. A just war is defined by its intent. That is the difference between war as a tragedy and a war as barbarism. Hamas actively seeks to increase the number of civilian casualties on both sides. Only Hamas benefits from the deaths of Palestinian civilians, which increases world pressure on Israel to stop its military advance. Hamas's greatest weapon is international outrage against Israel. Enlightened opinion must not allow itself to be manipulated by Hamas. Witnessing the events of 1989 up close shaped the way I think about the possibilities of history. In recalling that exhilarating time, I refuse to despair now. The morning after this war, Palestinians and Israelis will wake up into the same Middle East. No one is going anywhere. In the end, we'll have no choice but to coexist. Thank you for allowing me to reconnect with that wellspring of hope. With gratitude, Yossi Klein Halevi, Jerusalem. Just few words to conclude. Today's Central European Forum is about to end. However, the holiday of 17th of November has not ended yet. Intellectuals are afraid that the status quo of democracy that started somewhere in 80s, 90s. As you have heard, our speaker talked about the possibility that democracy is just some passing time between the dictatorships. Just the plans and political ideas are now being presented in more sophisticated ways by the dictators. However, we will continue in political discussions. Central European forums sometimes have meetings during the winter, maybe next year in spring. We are happy to see so many of you here today. Wish you a very pleasant evening and nice rest of the national holiday of 17th of November, thanks to which we are here today. Wish you a nice evening.